Okay, so a couple things here really quick. This is your list for the semester test. And, oh, what's due tomorrow? I didn't tell you the homework?
No.
Gettysburg Address?
No. Well, we never even got that. Yeah, we did.
All right.
Is it in the packet though?
Yeah, in the packet. The Gettysburg Address.
Is it in the...
In the packet, the Gettysburg Address. And it's on the second line. It's just under Universal Battle, and it's shockingly short. You have to read the Gettysburg Address. And it's amazing. One of the things I really admire about Lincoln, not the fact that he was a pretty tough guy, and the fact that hard-nosed, I appreciate that. But he was able to be very concise, say so much in just a few words. So please read it, and then you'll notice there's 5 questions underneath. You notice that? You notice?
Yeah.
Now you do not have to answer all 5 with you don't have to answer them all with like a short ID. The first 4, just give me the phrase. Like what document, just tell me what document. I'll make it pretty equal. Number 5 is the one you do have to answer like a short ID, like 3 sentences. Sound good? Yeah, it's got to be due tomorrow. Now, one more little story about this. Do you have enough room to write this here?
No.
So, we good on that? I know somebody would try and write it up here, and I wouldn't take it. Please do it on a sheet of paper. So just a phrase for 1 through 4. That's all I want. And the big thing is 1 through 4 build the 5. 5 is the big one. You know, why were we fighting this horrible war? It had to be worth something. Okay, next. The semester test. The semester test will be a 5-day test. So we'll get off. That would be for all of us. I had a couple of those in college with like a 3-day test. Still gives me goosebumps thinking about it. So, you notice the term. Yes, I printed it small because you are young and or spry, correct? So you notice the first one's with asterisks. These are topics. And you're going to have to choose these topics. So you choose with the with 1 asterisk, you're going to choose 3 of these topics. With the 2 asterisks, you choose 4 of these topics. So let's say you choose one of the topics. Let's say you choose the road to revolution. Everyone got that? For that topic you choose, then you have to pick 3 terms and write a short answer for each one, dealing with the road to the events leading to the Revolutionary War. Yes.
So per asterisk, you need 3 terms, and then each of those terms are a short ID.
Short ID.
So then, does the asterisk you need to write like? Oh, so okay, I get it.
But so I told you have to choose 4 for the ones with 2 asterisks. For one of those 4, you only have to write 2 short IDs. So for 20 total. I lied.
Wait, that's like 4.5.
Yeah, calm down. Calm down. I'm gonna. It's not quite what you think. Yes.
Wait, so if you choose 4 of the 2 asterisks, but you only write 2 short IDs.
For one of the 4, and the other 3 you have to write 3.
Wait, so the 2 asterisks.
For the ones with 2 asterisks, you choose 4 topics.
Yes.
For 3 of the 4 you choose, you write
Yes.
3 short IDs.
Yes.
For one of the last remaining one, you only write 2.
Okay.
So that's a total of 20.
Okay.
Now, how long your short ID is going to be for this one? 17 sentences each. And all of it's going to be uphill, and you have to do it in crayon.
Okay.
Each one is only 3 sentences. I don't want 4 sentences, I want 3. So it's a little bit shorter. By the way, how many sentences is that total then?
3 times 20.
60. Is that much? Really? 60 sentences is that much? It's almost too little. Let's go more.
What if we just wrote 60 sentences and they just
So 3 sentences, 3-sentence short ideas. What do you need? A brief summary, an example of either the event or the events going around that caused it, and why it's important. But the reason I'm giving you the topics is I want you to focus why it's important on how it led to, let's say you choose Road to Revolution. Why it's important towards the revolution. Like, the French and Indian War. Why did that help lead to revolution? Because of the British debt. So why it's important, it's not, I want you to focus a little bit, which I think will actually make it a little bit easier. And only 3 sentences, so they're relatively short ideas. And that's your entire file, except for the diorama. You have to make a diorama. So everyone bring your shoebox. And clay, right? Lots of clay. Yes?
Wait, so like,
Wait!
so for like industrial revolution, you have to choose 3.
3 of these topics that relate directly to this industrial revolution.
So how do you know which ones?
That's what you're gonna have to study. Yeah. So I talked about the Industrial Revolution. So there's things like, since you asked me, things like the word the American system, or the Second Great Awakening, and the cult of domesticity, or the Transportation Revolution, or wage slavery and free labor. All those directly relate to the Industrial Revolution. So I'm giving you lots of choices. Yes.
So then when writing that, your introduction would be like this.
No introduction. Just start.
The definition, I guess.
Yeah. Some.
Would say blank led to the revolutionary, and then the next one would be blank led to the revolutionary. The example would be different in all of them.
Yeah.
They all had to do with the revolutionary war.
Yeah. So the first one you explain what it is.
Uh-huh.
So you just explain. You don't need any. And then the second one, give an example of either event or an example of it.
Yeah.
And then the last one, show how it relates to the Industrial Revolution or the American Revolution, whatever topic you chose. Yes.
So the 3 topics for like the one aspect,
Yeah.
and then 2 topics for the
4.
4. Wait, so you do both?
Yeah, you're doing both.
3 and
Yeah, 3 for the first part. 3. So you have to choose 7 topics total.
and then
But I want you to choose more from the double object. That's why I'm going to do that. That's why.
and then you said 3 IDs for each topic.
Except for 3 IDs for the same one, but one for one of the 4 of the double object, you only have to choose 2. No.
What do you mean?
No, no. Yes.
So we're gonna be able to write down.
I'm going to give you the list.
Okay.
So as long as you have remembered it, here you go.
No.
So like
4 times 3 is 7.
we can't have
That's 4.
Well, you can have a list, but I will give you a different list. As long as
Okay.
you just got 3 now.
Okay.
I won't give you a different list. In fact, I might even,
The other way?
over the next week, I might even add it.
Okay. 3 is 12. 9. What should matter with you?
Yeah, you add 4 plus 3 is 7.
Math, I know.
No, I don't know what, how are you doing?
Bro, says we only need
Okay, so that is your final.
Oh.
20 total short IDs. But I want to focus on certain things. And over the next week, I might add a couple more, give you a couple more, and give them to you. A couple more choices. I want you to have good choices that you feel confident about writing. No, you won't have to write any more short IDs. I'll just give you more choices. And this is what I'll give you for the test. Yeah.
Can you check to make sure we're relating the right things?
Yeah. In fact, on the Thursday and Friday before the exam, I'll let anyone come in at lunch if they want it, and I'll answer any question you have and tell you if they will or not. Okay? So you can come in here and just ask all kinds of. Now I do it all in the form of interpretive dance. So we'll clear it open. We'll just. I mean, it's going to be amazing. I got to start remembering. Yes.
And then could you write one just to make sure we got it down?
Sure.
Okay.
And you come in, and the thing about this is, I know it's writing, but it's 3-sentence ones are not that much. And the thing is, you're going to know what's on here. And the reason I'm doing the topic is I want you to kind of start focusing it to something. That's the only reason I'm doing it. And yes, you're going to have to go through and figure out which ones apply. No, you can't do the same one twice. Someone's there, oh, so we can do like, if it applies to Jacksonian democracy and industrial revolution? No. Did that dash anyone's hopes? All right. No multiple choice, nothing but short IDs and a diagram. Sound good?
Wait, multiple
Hmm?
No multiple.
No multiple choice, no matching, no long essay, just just short IDs and a diagram. So bring a shoebox. And what else you need? Cool.
Are you serious?
No.
You think I would make that up? And so if I add any more choices, I'm just doing that to try to give you other choices. You know, before I used to do this, I would give 4 columns and just say choose 5 from each column. Just do short IDs. But I wanted these topics to start focusing you on something. And actually, I think that makes it a little bit easier. So why it's important, you must relate whatever your short ID is to the topic you choose. So sectionalism, those events leading up to the Civil War, you just have to relate to the Civil War. Alrighty then, yes.
Can you like put like industrial revolution and then kind of write a brief under it and then do the next topic there? Or do you want us to like clearly state that it leads to the topic?
So what you did first was the Industrial Revolution and do your 3.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 separate
Kind of
ones.
like list it.
3 separate ones. Yes.
Is that next Thursday and Friday between?
Yeah, next Thursday and Friday. And so look at it, answer any question you have, and that might be a time I might give you more choices. I might take some on, say, oh, we didn't quite get there, stuff, but I will be sure you.
So on, say one of the one asterisks, so we do 2 short IDs on, like, if we choose all
No,
of
those are, each one of those
them, 3 on.
are 3.
You do 3 on one.
You do 3, you choose 3 of them, and each one of the 3 you choose here. But then once you do 4, 3 of the 4 you do 3, 1 on 2. I'm giving you a breakdown.
You said I can bring your own like this.
So you choose.
No, you can have that.
Oh,
Not
You choose 3.
But I'll give you something almost exactly the same. So as long as you study it,
You
you
read
should-
about 3 things from each thing.
It's just one of the double dash when we write 2.
I decided
I thought-
21. I literally just decided 21 was too many.
I agree.
And so I said, okay, for 1, I'll only make you do 2. That's the only reason I did it.
It's an odd number, so it's not.
Okay, let's go then and take up your notes and finish it up. What's that? Why would that be easy?
Why are you doing
Yeah,
that?
I mean, I guess if you want to just go, you all have to do 3, I guess we could do it. But that was me giving you a little bit of a break, but if you want me to be easier for you.
This is too hard for me.
All right. So did we get right to the crater and the fire? They just exploded the line. Is that where we got to?
Yeah.
The whole thing blew up, and Ferraro, to leave these men. Did we talk about that? Did we talk about? He just blew up right with the bell ring, right?
Yes.
So it blew up, and they're all sitting there eating breakfast, and there was a Confederate squad in a trench, all sitting around a campfire, and they're cooking breakfast. Well, a slave is cooking their breakfast. Confederacy. And boom, the whole thing went up. And stuff is flying all over the place for miles. So people 2 or 3 miles away had no idea this attack was coming. You know, stuff is coming at us. By the way, who else didn't know this attack was coming? Yeah. The Union soldiers who were going to attack had no idea. They were all knocked cold. Out. They had no idea. So here's that boom, that squad. There's bodies flying. I mean, just awful. A mile away, behind the Union lines, so out of a trench, but there's a squad of Union forces kind of rotated out, and they're the same deal. They're at a little campfire. They're cooking their breakfast, and all of a sudden the explosion, all the stuff flying, and they're doing this, and stuff lands all over, and they see something kind of big coming, and it's getting closer and closer and closer, and then all of a sudden, according to them, their story, it was that slave who landed like this, on his feet, like this. And they're like, whoa! And they all looked at him like that. Supposedly, he landed on his feet, was perfectly fine. They took him into a tent and they charged a dime to see the flying man. So, Lee's men got up, and instead of seeing like knocked out Confederates and maybe the trench line kind of flattened a little bit, there's this massive crater, 20 feet deep, 100 yards across, this massive crater, and they got to the edge of the crater. And thus the name of the battle is, I didn't put a slide on this thing, so write down the Battle of the Crater. I think we got that yesterday, but it's just the Battle of the Crater. And they're all, half out of it. And they get to this edge of the crater, and what do? They go in. And they'll find out something when 2,000 of them go into the crater. It's a lot easier to go into a hole than out of a hole. So they all pour in, and it would have been nice to have their general. Where was General Lee? Yeah, he was drunk in his shelter. So they all pour in, and they get to the other side, and they're trying to scramble out. Pretty much just this mob of men. Well, General Ferraro's regiment or division, remember those were, they called those units colored regiments, and they were gung-ho ready to go and meet, pull them out, fearful of a slaughter. They were going to be the reinforcements. And they go charging right behind, up to the edge of the crater and into the crater too. And soon you have almost 6,000 men in the crater. Now, General Ferraro, if he was there, might have realized we should go around the crater. Where was Ferraro? He wasn't there. Anybody want to guess where Ferraro was? He was in the same bomb-proof as Lee. What is the name for somebody who is opposed to drinking alcohol, wants to cut back on drinking alcohol? You remember that term? Abolition is getting rid of slavery. Someone said it. Yeah, temperance. Yeah, temperance. Ferraro was a leader of the temperance movement. And Ferraro was in that dugout trying to convince Lee of the evils of drink. Anybody want to guess what two generals are going to be court-martialed after this battle? I'm going to take a wild guess. Well, what's going to happen? The Confederates are going to start waking up. Literally, waking up. And they start coming to the edge of this crater, and there's Union soldiers trying to crawl up the sheer sides, and they can't get up. So what do? They can't miss. They start taking cannon with canister, like lifting the back end so they can fire into the crater. And this golden opportunity to end the stalemate right there turned into another Union disaster. Another 7,000 casualties. And they could, because other attacks didn't try to come and it was too late. And what did the Confederates do? They just kept the crater there. They actually dumped a bunch of dirt on the bodies of people who died there and dug their trenches around it. The crater's still there. Huh? Say it again? No, the bodies have been reinterred to another, but there's probably still bones and things, almost certainly. And they find them all the time in battlefields. When I was at Antietam, they found bodies in 2018. And so probably Confederate men. Well, it's so that they won't let you go into it anymore. They used to let people go in. But it's all part of the battlefield. And for the rest of the siege of Petersburg, Confederate soldiers would be like, ear to the ground. And I think I mentioned World War I, they did this all the time. There'd be tunnel wars between British and French soldiers versus German soldiers. 20 feet under the ground, they're trying to tunnel under their trenches and they run into each other. Of course, they had high explosives, and the British blew up part of a mountainside in Belgium. A small mountain. It's still there, this kind of half mountain. They used too much dynamite. So, with that, stalemate. They couldn't break the stalemate. And now it's up to Sherman in the West. Now, Sherman is here. And he begins his march to Atlanta at the same time that Meade and Grant began their march to Richmond. And so, there's Chattanooga and Sherman. Here's Atlanta. He has about 85 to 90,000 men. So many men died of disease. You can imagine, about the water and everything, that numbers fluctuate all the time. The Confederate commander was Joseph E. Johnston. The same guy who was commander in front of Richmond, who was horribly wounded and then replaced by General Lee. Probably the best defensive commander of the war, the most beloved general on any side of the Civil War. After the war, General Lee is going to have this kind of mythology, especially in the South, and people talk about him all the time. But Johnston was the one that the men just adore, because he really showed that he cared about their food and tried to do the best for them, and a master of defense. And so two of the best generals of the war are going to fight in this battle. So let's go right to this map right here. Here's Atlanta. Here's Chattanooga. The Confederates are right here. Sherman, though, uses the mountains to shield his advances. And unlike the battles that are going to happen in the East, like the Wilderness and Spotsylvania, remember those horribly bloody battles? These are relatively bloodless. And I should add, what is it called where you kill so many of the enemy? They finally just have to quit fighting. What is that called? Yeah, that's attrition. That's a word you need to know, attrition. So, this will be relatively bloodless. Sherman did this, smart tactics. Here's Johnston. There's a rail line he has to have for his supplies. Sherman attacked this way, yet swung around to get behind to cut off the rail. But Johnston was a very talented general. He pulled back just in time, so it wasn't cut off. Sherman is going to do that 4 times. Fake attack, swing around. Fake an attack, swing around. All the way. There was only one really pitched fight at Kennesaw Mountain. So the casualties were not near as bloody. But the outcome was almost the same. By June, there's stalemate in Petersburg and stalemate in Atlanta. Johnston successfully withdrew his army and saved it. And thus we have, everyone got that? Stalemate in Atlanta, stalemate in Petersburg. At Atlanta, slaves have dug these massive artillery palisades. Remember I showed you these Cheval de Frise yesterday? This is the Atlanta defenses. This one you can really see the defenses. All encircling Atlanta. Atlanta was not that big of a town then, but it's an important railway place. And so by July, Johnston is held. Sherman's army's not big enough to totally cut him off. Sherman's going to try to come up with something, but if Johnston can hold out for the next few months, Confederacy will win. Stalemate. Remember, the North has got to show either they have to win or show they're going to win before the election of 1864. And in the summer of 1864, that's all everyone can talk about this election. Because the election is going to be a referendum on the war. A referendum is just another term for an election. We'll tell you a more technical term, but this is a prophetic picture. This is General Lincoln, did I say General Lincoln? President Lincoln, going down to Antietam to convince the general there to move after the battle. Finally, Lincoln would fire him. Do you remember who this general was? That's McClellan, and those are going to be the two opponents in the election, Lincoln and McClellan. General McClellan, still beloved by the Army. So the Republicans nominated, well, the Republicans did a weird thing. They did an amalgamation ticket. They chose President Lincoln as the president, the running mate, the incumbent, Lincoln. But as his running mate, the vice president, they chose a Democrat. Not any Democrat, a Southern Democrat from Tennessee, Andrew Johnson. So he stayed loyal to the country. He did not betray the Union. And they didn't run as Democrat or Republican in this election. They just simply ran as the Union. Thus the Union nomination. No, they did not make a new party. It was just simply saying we're the Union of Republicans and war Democrats. And the symbolism is pretty strong there. These are Republicans and Democrats for a union, and they picked somebody from a state who seceded, who stayed loyal. Now, they have basically nothing in common except for their desire for union. They both hated the planter class, Andrew Johnson started out about as poor as any president in history. In fact, the only ones who compare would probably be Andrew Johnson, Martin Van Buren, and Bill Clinton. I think the only ones that started out that poor. Yeah.
Would you say this is probably chosen opposite party?
An amalgamation just means a combination. So just write down Union. And he hated the planter class who started the Civil War in the South. And so that was really the only thing he had. But what do vice presidents do? I mean, this is just symbolism for the election. Vice presidents break ties in the Senate. They have one more job. What's the other job that the vice president does? Yeah, wait for the president to die. This is what we call horrible foreshadowing. And yes, Andrew Johnson looks like an angry toad in that picture, doesn't he? That's very toad-like. That tongue's going to go out and grab a fly in a second. But the Democrats, George McClellan. And there are a lot of Democrats. And there's a lot of people that might have voted Republican in 1860 are just tired of this war. And even though McClellan says he's for Union, too, a vote for McClellan is a vote to end the war. A vote for McClellan is to end it. So this is a referendum on the war. A vote to Lincoln is to win the war. And with stalemate in front of Atlanta, stalemate at Petersburg, it doesn't look good. But to give you an idea how much the Republican Party and Lincoln changed, the vast majority, or Republicans were free soil, but they did not believe in equality. Lincoln, he thought if slavery was eliminated in the United States, slaves should be sent to Africa. Lincoln was a man who believed, like a lot of free soilers, in a white republic. But look at this cartoon for Lincoln and the Republicans in 1864. So a vote for Lincoln, here he is, and he's shaking hands with a working man, the paper hat. That's how they showed working people. But what's behind them in this picture here? A school. But who's going to the school? It's integrated. It's black and white students together. That is a big shift in the feeling of the Republican Party and Lincoln. Maybe not total equality, but it's implying now we're fighting for equality and freeing slaves and making them citizens. This is a big shift. There were virtually no abolitionists in the United States when the war began, North and South. And clearly things have changed a lot, haven't they? Look at a vote for McClellan is a vote for slavery to the auction. And here's the Confederate flag. Who's the president of the Confederacy again? Yeah, that's Jefferson Davis. Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy. But nobody by August thought Lincoln would win, including Lincoln. They thought stalemate. Stalemate, we're never going to win, we're calling victory. And this cartoon is a McClellan cartoon, and it's showing the beautiful mountain valleys of the Shenandoah. There we go. And McClellan is going to somehow bring apart the warring parties. And so that's Lincoln, and that's Jefferson Davis, pulling the country apart, and it's implying McClellan will bring it together. Yet everyone knows if McClellan wins, the Confederacy survives. But I hate this cartoon. I hate this style of thinking because it implies that these two are equal. That Lincoln and McClellan are both trying to destroy the country. And that's not at all what happened. He's the United States, representing the U.S. in survival, and he's a traitor. They're not morally equivalent. But the Democrats are implying Lincoln just wants to destroy everything. And that's the way it was in 1864. I hate that kind of thinking that happens all the time now. This equivalency. But nobody thought McClellan or Lincoln would win. In fact, this might have been the darkest time for the United States in its history. It looked like it was over. Everybody knew if McClellan wins the Civil War in the U.S., who knows what will survive. This is the darkest moment, maybe ever. Lincoln was so distraught that the second week of August, he sat at his desk and wrote a letter to McClellan congratulating him on his victory. Because he knew in November, there's no way he could write that letter. He'd be so destroyed, devastated. And presidents then, the elections in November, they would be inaugurated in March. Today's January, but then it was March. And so Lincoln wrote this congratulations and said, despite what you say, we both know that once you're elected, or once you're inaugurated, you have to end the war. So I will do everything possible to try to win the war before your inauguration, and please help me. That's how distraught he was. He folded the letter very carefully, put it in a sealed envelope, and put it in his desk, and waited. It's over. That's the way it looked like. The Union is done. Just a couple months. So if they get to the end of October and it looks like they're still stalemate, it's over. I can't emphasize that enough. And then somebody will save the day. There's only one person possible that could save the day. Does anyone know? Nobody? Well, first period immediately yelled out one person. Yes.
That's what I was
I
thinking.
think that's
And I kind of figured they would because everyone thought he would save the day, but you know, he's dead. I know then what you're thinking, what about his brother Raoul? No, he's totally made up. So obviously Jefferson Davis. The president of the Confederacy would save the Union. Why? He hated Johnston and wanted a more aggressive general. And so at the end of August, he fired Johnston. He fired his most able defensive commander, who all he has to do by the end of August is hold out for 2 more months, and the Confederacy wins, and he probably would have held out. Sherman was very talented, maybe not, but, and replaced him with the most aggressive general in the Confederate Army, John Bell Hood, who lost an arm at Second Bull Run leg at Second Bull Run, and used his arm at Gettysburg. General Lee back at Richmond told Davis, no, you don't want him, he's too aggressive. But he picked him. And Hood took command and immediately did the only thing Hood knew what to do. He attacked. And in a series of 3 battles over 2 weeks, Hood destroyed his army by beating his head against Sherman's bigger army. They almost won one of the battles, and maybe he could have done it. But he destroyed his army, and the remnants had to retreat, and Atlanta fell. And it was almost like everything changed. Just overnight, boom, we have a chance. Overnight. Hood retreated, and with that, it went from, we're never going to win, let's just end it, to Lincoln's going to lead us to victory. At the same time, the harbor city of Mobile, Alabama, fell to the Union Navy. The last major harbor of the Confederacy still held, at least in the eastern part of the Confederacy, still held by the Confederates. Union gunboats sailed in. Admiral Farragut, who suffered from vertigo, had a kind of inner ear problem and would get dizzy. He did not want to collapse in the battle, so he actually had himself tied to the riggings of his flagship, so he would show his courage. Insane courage. So the 64-year-old man hung right over as he fought. That's a cannon. They fought a Confederate gunboat to Tennessee. They were literally 6 feet apart, and he just sat over the top. Okay, that's what we call crazy courage. And once again, I think I mentioned this before. Farragut, the admiral who his fleet took New Orleans earlier, Farragut Square in Washington, D.C., really cool place, unbelievably good restaurants, right? Because I'm sure some of you, I really like food. Who's with me? Do you like food?
Yeah.
Who likes food? Some of you don't like food. Okay. Food can be scary. And when Mobile fell, combined with Atlanta, we're going to win. Mobile wouldn't have been enough alone, but with Atlanta. And when the election turned out, Union. The people voted Union. So they voted the Republican Lincoln back into office. In the popular vote, McClellan still got 45% of the vote. The Army that still loved McClellan voted overwhelmingly for Lincoln. Yes, that was the first major election where they had a couple million ballots all done by mail. So how else are you going to do it with soldiers at the front? That's why people say, oh, mail ballots insecure. Civil War, moving on. World War II. Also, you see why by the Electoral College, it was a huge victory. Because remember, the popular vote doesn't matter. The United States is the only country that does their elections like this. Every little state has an individual little election for all the electoral votes in their state. But do you see why they won it? West Virginia, that's 5 more electoral votes in case the election was closed, and that's why they hastily created Nevada. Okay, one of the electors got lost. No one really knows why we didn't make it to Washington, D.C., and only 2 voted. But that's why they created those states to make sure they have those electoral votes. The Republicans would do that again in the 1880s, because we're about growing Democratic Party. That's why there's a Montana. So they wanted a Republican electoral. That's why there's 2 Dakotas instead of 1 Dakota or any Dakota. So Lincoln is elected, and that means the United States is going to win. We're going to finish the war. There's no chance for the Confederacy. They cannot win. And so I love this from Harper's Magazine. Here's him holding the election results, and now his statue is very tall. I love that picture. And so, with that, Hood retreats. And Hood decides to take the remnants of this army and try to cut off Sherman's supply line. And he advances into Tennessee and attacks the big Union fortified city of Nashville. And December 15th and 16th, 1864, the Union Army wins a decisive victory, destroying Hood's army, generically called the Army of the West. In fact, I don't mean just like they went to retreat. I mean, the army was gone, and just stragglers took off. His army was completely destroyed. But the thing is, this is a massive victory, and the war still continues. The Confederacy just couldn't stomach retreating or surrendering. Robert E. Lee and his Army of Northern Virginia was still holding on in Petersburg, and the war is over. How do you get them to quit? Everybody knows it's going to be over. Sherman's going to write a letter before this battle, but this battle will confirm the war was over. And Sherman has a proposal to take the war to the South, to make them quit. And it's going to be a phenomenon that's going to happen in war after war, where the war is going to get bloodier after it's already been decided. We already know who's going to win, and the slaughter is going to get even bigger. You really see it in World War I and World War II. You really see it in World War II. Japan was utterly and completely destroyed by the summer of 1945. Their cities have been bombed and flattened, firebombed to nothing. They were out of oil, out of food. Their army and navy was destroyed. They were desperately looking for a way to surrender. And the United States still dropped 2 atomic bombs. With Japan wanting to surrender, proposing to surrender. Of course, we were terrified about the Soviets coming in. This was another story. But wars get worse. So General Sherman, sitting in Atlanta, is going to propose something that in the 20th century we're going to dub total war. And that's a picture of him in the Atlanta defenses. Can you see his bright red hair? And by the way, it's him sitting on his horse for some reason. Doesn't his leg look really weird? And his foot, he looks like he's wearing about a size 3 shoe. But they couldn't win an outright victory and end the war on the battlefield. And that would be proven at Nashville a month after he wrote the letter. The Confederate Army was destroyed, but they didn't quit. How do you fight this? Well, first off, you have to cut off their supplies. So what he proposes is, we got to target their industry and transportation. The remnants of the rail, what little industry they have to make the supplies work, even though they have nothing, food production. Now, everybody write down the blockade. The Union blockade is already doing this, but he said, I got to take it to them. Now, in 1864, how do you target a factory? Then you literally have to go there and blow it up. Well, can't you do something else? If you want to knock out a factory, you can blow up the factory, kill its workers. You kill the workers and the factory shuts down. And this is where he says, is I'm going to propose taking the war to civilians. And everybody will become a combatant. When I mean everybody, I mean every man, woman, and child of the South will become a legitimate target for this war. Made to suffer, and that means potentially killed, or starved to death, or maimed, or hacked until they quit this fight. Everybody becomes a target, a legitimate target in this war. How do we do this? Well, we're going to break their will. Maybe even get the people to revolt against their government. If we can make them revolt, or just try to change the government, then they'll have to quit fighting. We can't win an outright victory on the battlefield. It takes too long. We want them to quit and quit now. How do we do it? Break their will. Make war so horrible for everybody. In World War I, the armies were so large, they started devising up where the two armies, like the German and the French and British armies, were fighting each other. They called them fronts, a new term. There's going to be a Western front, and a Russian front, and a Balkan front, and a Mesopotamian front. You get the point, there's fronts. For the term total war, there's going to be a new front, the home front. And every person is a combatant. Now, you miss the fun of the Cold War. You miss that fun. I grew up, when I was your age, under the constant threat of nuclear annihilation in the Soviet Union. We drilled this, we talked about this, we got little notes from civil defense on what to do if there's a nuclear war. And every person in the United States was a target to die, as was the person in the Soviet Union and China and Western Europe and Canada and Japan and every place else. You miss that fun. And that's what I grew up with, the constant threat, the terror of instantaneous death. And yes, I know there's scary things out. Someone threw a period product, but we do have, I mean, the closest they come up with that, but it's a pretty good analogy, would be like the active shooter drills. You have that terror of that. There's an element of that. But I also know you're thinking right now that I went through nuclear drills and hiding under my desk and doing that stuff in case of nuclear war, and your first thought is, wow, are you old? And the answer is, yes, I am old. But the thing is, war is politics. And how do you end the war? You make the people change the government and end the war. You make it so horrible. You make them scream, as Sherman said. So the idea is, if you don't quit, Sherman is coming. But that's what bombs can do in the 20th century. That's what nuclear bombs can do. When the United States invaded Iraq in 2003, Iraq had basically no army. Yes, we targeted the Iraqi army, but our bombing strikes and missile strikes were against clean water facilities, sewer facilities, electrical plants, hospitals. Why? To make civilians suffer so much. And yes, that's going to kill civilians, but we claim we're targeting a power plant, but the civilians who live nearby would be killed too, which the United States would kill. We kill. And so that's the way we fight now. We target civilians. It's all politics. War is politics. Break their will. So it's attrition on the grand scale. Remember, attrition has killed so many, we'll kill them all. And every country would adopt this in World War I, and now it is just the norm. We don't even think about it. Of course we're going to do this. The term total war would be created in World War I. A German general named Erich Ludendorff would come up with the term total war. And so everyone adopted it. And I'm going to say this with absolute certitude, this is the most horrible thing ever created by mankind, by humankind. The most horrible thing. I was going to show my age. The most horrible thing created by humankind, total war. Virtually every atrocity, in fact, the most horrible thing you can think of that have happened in the last 150 years, all because of total war. To avoid the revolt of the enemy within, and the fact that we might have enemy within our own country, is the thinking that Germany had when they invaded Poland and then the Soviet Union in World War II, where the vast majority of the world's Jews lived. And that would be the justification for what they call the final solution. What was it? Total war. Why did the U.S. drop atomic bombs? Total war. All total war. In fact, have you heard of the term genocide? The first genocide was because of total war. What was the first genocide? The Ottoman Empire during World War I, where they killed a group over 1 million people called the Armenians. Sherman was not thinking, how do I come up with the worst thing possible? He just wanted to go home. So his plan? To march to the sea. They're going to cut a swath 60 miles wide and destroy everything on a march from Atlanta to Savannah, Georgia. So the plan was a relatively leisurely march and get here at December 20th, 1864. And just cut a path. They're going to live off the land, so steal food. Any farmers resist, burn down the farm. Destroy all the railroads, destroy every public building, destroy everything that could be used for the war effort, and move through. Basically telling the rest of the South, you resist and Sherman is coming. Quit. That's what heavy bombers do. Like bombing of Japanese cities with firebombs. Same kind of thing. So, or nuclear bombs. But now we're doing it with this massive march all the way through. And when they left Atlanta, kind of by accident, but this is Atlanta, Atlanta was burnt down and they just took off. They burnt down so many buildings that the chimneys would only be standing, and they called those Sherman's tombstones. Sherman's neckties are what they would do with the rails. They take the rails of the train off, of the tracks, of railroad tracks off, put them over the ties, light that on fire so they get superheated in the middle, and then bend them at a 90-degree angle so they can never use them again. They destroyed everything. And then arrived at Savannah, and he sent a note to Lincoln, here's your Christmas present. And then they turned into South Carolina. I know what you're thinking. The March to the Sea sounds horrific. They didn't target civilians yet, but yet some civilians did die. They didn't target to kill, they just targeted to make them suffer and starve. But if they resisted, they killed them. This is just horrible. Make them suffer. I know you want a more cartoon-based version dealing with a crab. So here's Chester the Crab, Sherman's March to the Sea. Here they are liberating pigs. Here's the march, and here's Sherman arriving in Savannah, just in time for Santa Claus. Yes, Christmas as you know it, and Santa Claus, as you probably think of right now, was literally being created at this time. One more thing. You see?
Good morning, staff and students. Pardon the interruption, real quick before lunchtime. Just bare necessities for those of you interested in eating there. Today at lunchtime, the food will be arriving a little bit later than usual. So once again, for bare necessities, the food will be here, but it will not be right at the beginning of lunch. Thank you.
Should be by 4. By the way, there's a crab. Last thing then he turned into South Carolina and really destroyed South Carolina. Why South Carolina? Yeah, that's where it all began. And they devastated it. And started marching towards Meade's army. It's done. By the way, what's going to happen to all those thousands of dead? The cemeteries were full. Good luck, everybody. Civil War, that's where embalming would be invented. To get bodies back home. Embalming came out of the Civil War. They needed to do something. I should add, Grant, Sherman, and General Sheridan, all the leading generals, all learned how to fight total war. This is what we call foreshadowing the, what they would call the Indian War. Oh, everybody. Gettysburg Address. Tomorrow, or review list. Anybody have questions? Next Thursday and Friday, I'll be at lunch. We'll open it up. I'll get my good dancing shoes on. I'm already prepping. you tomorrow.
Thank you.
See ya. Could you get one light, please? One of the light switches? Thank you, Andrew. You're a good man. Yeah. Tomorrow.
Okay.
Everyone, I'm gonna give you 50 minutes to read.
All right.
I already ate it. It's good.